Out of all the scenes in Across the Spider-Verse, this is absolutely my favorite. This third act scene between Gwen and her dad, the writing is just so intricate. And you see it right from the start. I think people focus on the heart-to-heart part of the scene, which we'll get to, but there is so much in the lead-up. It is such a masterclass in writing the exact type of subtext that permeates the dialogue in difficult family relationships. As I mentioned in that short about Spider-Gwen, watch that if you haven't already. At the beginning of the scene, we're seeing Gwen's expectation of what this interaction is going to be like. She thinks she sees her dad coming into her room with a gun, and then we see it's just a penguin toy, and he makes this comment.
Want to go easy on the penguin?
I think the real impact of this line isn't in what he's saying, but in what he's not saying. The last interaction he had when he saw his daughter in her spider uniform for the first time, we had tensions between these two characters at the highest they've ever been. She was pouring out her heart to him and he was about to arrest her. That's where we left off, and the fact that now he's seeing her in uniform and he's choosing to be casual and he's choosing not to bring it up and to instead make a little casual joke. That is a huge step. That is a huge concession from him. In that scene, she had asked him this.
Can you just not be a cop for a second and be my dad here?
And now in this first moment where they're reunited, he is doing that. He is treating her like his daughter, even though she is in full Spider-Gwen gear. But then, even if this is a big emotional concession from his point of view, you cannot deny that he's still doing this in a very masculine, dad who's a cop kind of way. He's not jumping right into the boiling emotional soup just under the surface here. No, he is being unemotional on purpose. And maybe to him, avoiding the conflict is a sign of just how much he cares. Through doing this, he's saying to her, I don't want to fight. I want things to be normal again. And I'm communicating that through modeling that dynamic right off the bat. But Gwen doesn't take it that way at all. She misses the implication that he wants to feel like normal dad and daughter again, and she takes it as straight up avoidance in a bad way. And she's like, well, if you don't want to talk about it, fine, neither do I. And she starts to leave. And in that moment, her dad says this.
You didn't even look at me.
This is him trying to connect with her, but it's really more than that. He just tried to slip back into normal father-daughter mode. She didn't want to do it, she wanted to leave. So now he's saying, fine, even if I hurt you too much to just go back to how things were, can you even at least look at me? Meaning, can we connect at any level? Is there any shred of our relationship left at all? Or is it really all gone? But again, she hears this completely differently. Parents have a long history of telling kids to look at them when they're talking, look me in the eye, pay attention, are you paying attention? What did I just say? Tell me what I just said. It's a control thing, it's a respect thing. You hear this all the time, even outside of parent-child relationships.
Look at me when you're talking to me! I think the stakes are here.
So her dad says this, and then in response, we get this, which is the opposite of what he was looking for, sort of, because she is still looking at him like she says, she's still connecting with him, and even though it's not normal jokey haha mode, it is the father-daughter dynamic, just the more angry dad, sullen teenager segment of that dynamic. But, you know, hey, we got some level of connection again, and that's enough to talk, that's enough to do something with this. And at this point, it seems like Gwen finally does get that he's in a lot of emotional pain. She gets that he is just trying to talk with her and connect with her like normal. So the first thing she does is she takes off her mask, and then she says,
You look skinny.
Very simple line, but again, this line could be taken in different ways. She could be connecting with him on that casual level. She could be saying, you lost weight, you look good. Or she could be saying, you lost weight, you look terrible. Like, I see how much of a toll this has taken on you. And I lean towards that second one because this is the first time her tone is softening. She is looking at him for the first time, and she's seeing that there's no malice at all in his body language or his expression. And maybe that's another reason why he wanted her to look at him, so she'd see that. But then the next line comes and resets everything back to ambiguity. And in that same way as before, that Gwen kind of takes defensively. We hear her dad say this.
Where have you been?
This is a classic line that is totally different in terms of what parents mean to convey versus what kids hear. Parents say this as a way of expressing concern, showing care. I was so worried about you. But then kids hear this as just their parents being controlling. It's interrogations, limiting their freedom. So in response to this interrogation by her police captain father about where she's been, at that point we get the big one, which ups all the tension like 1000% and launches us into the real conversation. The next phase, the heart-to-heart. Gwen delivers this gut punch of an answer. Where have you been?
Just been, out murdering all my friends.
So what's happening here exactly? What is she doing? What reaction is she trying to get out of her dad and how she thinks this is going to accomplish it? And then how does he actually react and why? And then why is she so surprised by it? Feels like she could have seen that response coming, but she didn't. And keep in mind, as we've already seen beforehand, but also just in this exchange, Gwen and her dad are not great communicators. Gwen in particular, we've seen this habit before with her, that she says kind of weird, funny things in awkward situations where she's uncomfortable. These little improvisations or little jokes that just fall flat. And that, by the way, is the first thing you must say here, that this is a joke, or at least it has the form of a joke. And for sure, it's the kind of joke that's really just a thin facade for very strong emotions, and those emotions come through way too strongly. Or maybe that's thinking about it in the wrong way. Maybe she knows that this is going to hurt, and putting it in the form of a joke, even a thinly veiled one, it's an awkward attempt to kind of soften the blow. Either way, I think the function of this is clear from Gwen's perspective. Even if her dad wants to avoid the conflict, she does want to talk about it right now. She is bringing it up. She doesn't care if it's uncomfortable. She's saying, yeah, sure, you were being casual before. Is this really the time to be casual? How about this casual joke? How does that feel? She's saying, you and I both know that we need to talk about what's come between us. You need to see my emotions, and you need to feel how much pain I'm in. Let's have a discussion about it like adults. But again, she thinks she's communicating that very clearly, but the way she carries that out, it's full of ambiguity. And her dad, of course, takes it in the wrong way. The way he sees it, he came trying to make peace, but now she wants to fight. He wanted a respectful interaction, but she just threw it back in his face. She is not interested in meeting him in his place of normalcy and concern. No, she's just gonna be a smart-ass teenager, and that's it. So again, this is Gwen showing that she wants to talk. She wants to fix things, she wants to engage, but by disrupting the peaceful interaction he was trying to conduct with this flippant joke of hers, he just sees her as refusing to fix things. He sees her as disengaging. And that's why when she says this, he also disengages. And then she's like, wait, what happened? And we end up with this beautiful broken interaction where a dad was trying to fix things in clumsy dad ways, and his teenage daughter was trying to fix things in her clumsy teenage daughter way, and they both just completely missed each other. But Gwen is more mature than that, and you can see that she's realizing that she kind of messed up. She knows that he was trying to do something in this unemotional dad language, but he just didn't get what she was communicating. And she was also being a little bit stubborn about refusing to speak in his language, so she goes after him, and she opens up the conversation again, and this time she is speaking in his language. And that's when their actual heart-to-heart begins. But let's stop here just for a second to appreciate this brilliant first half of the scene. Let's see what we can learn from these amazing 45 seconds. So what I love about this interaction so much is two things. First thing is, it's every single line here. It's every beat. There's no fat in this interaction at all. Each and every step of this interaction is dripping with complex emotion, complex intentions, and most impressively of all, rich ambiguity. You can split each one of these beats, each action and reaction, into how Gwen sees it and how her dad sees it. And we get two complete versions of what's going on. We get two worlds of what's happening right now. And both characters' actions make perfect sense from their own emotional framework. So if I were to distill this into concrete, actionable writing advice, that is the first thing. Maybe call this type of subtext double subtext, and this is just a great tool to use for these difficult relationships. So we got our normal subtext. Normal subtext is here's the overt meaning up top, but then here's the real meaning under the surface. And this double subtext phenomenon is here's the overt meaning up top, and then here's how character A sees that, and then here's how character B sees that. Character A thinks it's an attempt at peace, character B feels like it's an attack or whatever. So you got two plausible, conflicting implications behind each line. And the fact that it is each line here, even though it's just the setup to the real heart-to-heart, it enables us to go into that conversation already with so much built-up complex emotional weight. Okay, the second thing I love is the overall context of this. Emotional clashes are not, or really should not just be emotions directly clashing. Character A wants one thing, character B wants the opposite. Now here you see both characters still love each other very much, and you can feel that love buried under all this baggage, but still very much present in every step of the interaction. You see this in their Act 1 scene also where they have trouble communicating. It is so beautifully expressed there as well. Despite their difficulties, the speed at which Gwen runs over to hug him, it shows so powerfully how strong their love is despite whatever BS is preventing them from connecting. So here too, they both still love each other. That's not the conflict. They're both coming from the same place emotionally, and they're even coming from the same place practically too. They have the same goal. They want things to go back to normal. They want the relationship fixed. But how that happens, what I say to start that process, or how I hear you trying to start that process, at the end of the day, these people are just so different from each other, and it's those differences causing the discord. It's the fault of all these toxic patterns that they have that create misunderstandings, create distance, create pain, but it's not lack of love. So this is such a refreshingly nuanced way of depicting a rocky relationship. We have such a great model in just these 45 seconds. Toxic patterns like this are so much more interesting and feel so much more real than direct, simplistic character A hates character B and character B hates character A. No, separate out the underlying emotion from how the characters tend to interact with each other and how they tend to react to each other, and that's how you end up with great, organic, nuanced scenes like this. Okay, on to the next stage of the conversation, which is the real conversation. And I think the beautiful thing about the scene from a writing craft educational perspective is that it shows you so clearly that even when the characters are talking openly about their conflict and about their emotions, there are still so many ways, so many opportunities to make the dialogue layered. The layer I love the most in the sequence is the way Gwen chooses to engage once her last attempt kind of crashed and burned. Even though, like we said, Gwen can be awkward at times and sometimes she speaks without thinking, speaking, Gwen is very emotionally aware. She understands the people around her and she's okay with giving them space. So we see that emotional wisdom at work here again. What just happened? So we had Gwen trying to do this her way and her dad trying to do this his way. And I think Gwen realized a few things here. She understands that she messed up somehow. She also realized that her dad really is honest about wanting to fix things, but also, unlike her, he walked off completely misunderstanding her intentions. He didn't pick up on her approach at all. He just didn't get it. And Gwen's dad, he is not as emotionally intelligent as she is. He has his set ways of doing things, and either he does that or he's lost. So what does she do? How does she alter her approach? So the first thing she does is fix the very last thing that went wrong in the previous conversation.
You're a good cop, Dad.
Her last little joke, her dad took as her being a disrespectful smartass, so she frames all of this in terms of her respect for him, which isn't her being manipulative or anything. I think this is honestly how she feels, but it's the first step of the main conciliatory move she's subtly making here, which is speaking in their shared family language. She understands that her dad can't really get how she sees things, how she does things. He's not Miles, he's not like her, so she puts all of it in terms that he can relate to.
You have to understand. This mask is my badge.
And also terms that remove any doubt about their connection being intact. She wants to make that clear too. So she expresses this fully to him. She tells him how everything she's doing is built on the foundation of her profound respect for him.
I was trying so hard to wear this thing the way you would want.
There wouldn't be a Spider-Gwen without a Captain Stacy. And it's that move, I think, that leads him to making his decision.
Because I quit.
You're not gonna be captain?
Because he realizes there also wouldn't be a Captain Stacy without a Gwen.
You're the best thing I've ever done.
It's just beautiful. It's a beautifully written resolution to this conflict. But of course we're not done yet. So what I just talked about was the meat and potatoes of the scene. Or so I thought. Because something happened with this scene that I feel like happens quite often when trying to understand really, really great pieces of writing. There was a little detail that stuck out. It's always a little itty bitty detail. It was this.
I don't know what it is you gotta do.
Okay, one more time. Watch. Ah, so precious. So that little smile was what stood out to me. And I would say just that on its own didn't seem like anything that important, but of course it led me down a road to changing the entire way I was understanding the scene. And to be clear, this still is a minor detail, but it was something that prompted me to question things on a much deeper level. Up until now, in both movies, the animators and writers have done an excellent job of portraying Gwen as this character who's almost haunted. She hasn't really recovered from losing Peter, and she knows that Miles falling for her could mean that she's about to die because of how this multiverse works.
In every other universe, Gwen Stacy falls for Spider-Man. And in every other universe, it doesn't end well.
I'm not positive about this, tell me what you think, but she's saying in every other universe this happens. Seems to me like she's describing Gwen's death as a canon event. But even if not, I also learned that apparently she's the only Spider-Gwen in the Spider-Verse, meaning all the other Gwens are just regular old Gwens or Gwandas. So even if she's not on the chopping block as like a canon event, it still must be weird and isolating knowing that so many other versions of her, or maybe almost every other version of her, in every other universe is either dead or about to die. And that gives her the somberness, like she has a real limit to how happy she can be. We never see a big outpouring of positive emotion from her. Even when she's with Miles, there's still a touch of that hauntedness. And then right here after the scene with her dad, we do get the subtle moment of the sun breaking through the clouds. Right now, she is happy. And it's the first time we're feeling this with her with no constraints. And it's a moment that's really cool and all, but something was bothering me about it. And I realized it was that this conversation that she just had, it seems like it was about her relationship with her father, but if you think about what she actually talked about, it was really about the overwhelming pressure she's under from, like, everything else in the plot. Gwen is lost. We got a Spider-Verse in crisis, we have her clash with Miguel, and she still needs to help Miles. I get that she's happy about her relationship with her dad, and that's great, but that's a separate conflict, right? Her main arc was not solved here, which is kind of awkward because what happened to all this main plot stress that we just saw that just did not get solved here at all in this non-main plot arc scene? How does all of this go away when this happens? And then I realized, wait a second, no, this scene is part of her main arc. Despite being nowhere near that and the scene having none of those characters, we get happy Gwen here because her dad quitting the police force is the resolution to Gwen's entire plot arc as well. And this is so brilliant. So let me explain. So Gwen's dad quitting is not just resolving the minor plot conflict of Gwen facing arrest if she returns to her universe, and it's not just resolving the character conflict between one of our main characters and a side character, fixing this broken relationship. No, it was more than that. What I love that they did here was that they made this relationship deeper than just power of love. Meaning, they didn't write this as like, why does Gwen love her dad? Because she's his daughter, it's that simple. Why does she want to fix this relationship? Because love, pure love, isn't it beautiful? Nope, not necessarily. Why does Gwen love her dad? Why does she need him in her life so badly? Why Why is she suffering so much from this broken relationship? That can seem like an almost insensitive line of questioning for fans of the pure love thing, but on the contrary, I think it makes relationships more meaningful when you infuse them with functions. Make the relationship actually important to Gwen. Make this relationship into something that enables her life to function, so that when it's gone, we can feel that her life has stopped functioning correctly. So now returning to this moment, listen closely to what's being communicated in the scene. You kind of expect this conversation to be about, you know, how Gwen's dad was going to arrest his own daughter, how much of a betrayal that was, but it's not about that. If you listen to how Gwen describes the relationship from her perspective, that one event alone pales in comparison to what really caused the most suffering for her. Why does Gwen see her relationship with her dad as so important?
You have to understand. This mask is my badge.
I was trying so hard to wear this thing the way you would want, so I'm completely on my own.
Gwen is telling him that as Spider-Woman, she looks to him as a guiding light. When she is lost, he is her role model. She tries to be as good as him. She tries to do what would make him proud. When her dad threatened to arrest her, not only was that a betrayal, no, even more than that, as long as this conflict between them continued, Gwen would be lost at sea without a compass. Without her dad, Gwen's life does not work. And then, in fixing this relationship, that is also what we're getting back. We are fixing Gwen's life. We are restoring this guiding light for her, which we see immediately in the very moment of the relationship being fixed. Because what does her dad do? How does he solve his conflict? He quits being a cop. He's willing to walk away from his role entirely in order to repair the most important relationship in his life and keep his daughter safe. And what do we see Gwen doing right after this to fix her conflict? She follows his example. She also quits. She walks away from her role in the Spider-Verse entirely to repair the most important relationship in her life and keep her best friend safe. So in the very decision to quit, he's fixing the relationship and being the role model she needs. We're resolving their conflict and Gwen's greater conflict in one shot. So to go back and explain that little detail, Gwen's little moment of happiness right after the hug, the root of Gwen's suffering is not her relationship with her dad, it's not the struggle to help Miles, it's not even her grief over Peter's death. The root of all of it is how lost she feels in her capacity as a Spider-Person. And now she is no longer lost on any level, and that's why we get this relief now. It is extremely tight writing, both this scene and the setup they have to do throughout the whole movie in order to make this scene so meaningful, so functional, so efficient. I love when the big moment in a story is actually contained in something small. Gwen doesn't triumph by fighting the battle and defeating the bad guy, she triumphs by having a talk with her dad. It's like how the friendship between the hobbits and what that allows them to do, that's the major victory in Lord of the Rings, and the big battle with the king and the glory, that's just the diversion. It just goes to show how in stories it's really never about the action or the sci-fi or the powers or the fighting. We don't love stories that have those things because we love those things. We love the humanity behind those things. And I personally love when stories that have those things prove that to us, by demonstrating the humanity's importance on the structural level like this. So let's sum up. What did we learn from this? What's the takeaway? So I think what stood out as so different, what made me feel like I was learning an entirely new approach to writing these kinds of relationships, was how far they lean into the character part of character conflict, as opposed to the conflict part in finding complexity. You can do the character A wants one thing, character B wants the opposite, and take that difference in what they want and find complexity there. But with Gwen and her dad, even though there is plot conflict, these characters both love each other, they both want to fix the relationship. That is our starting point, and the complexity comes from who these people are. It comes from the differences in how they talk to each other, how they hear each other, their different approaches to solving problems, their different levels of emotional intelligence, and the complexity in what this relationship means also comes from who these people are. The conflict isn't just like this external thing, like an obstacle Gwen has to climb over and get past. It's grounded in a phenomenon that has shaped her entire life. And the resolution also comes from Gwen's dad realizing how much his daughter has shaped his entire life, how all of it has always only been about her. And by the way, all of this is also grounded in moments of agency, crucial junctures where things could go either way, and that doesn't just give more weight to the relationship and the efforts to fix it, it also just makes the storytelling of it so much more engaging. I could go on and on about this scene, there's so much to learn here. And this video wasn't even touching all the stuff they're doing with the plot and canon events and how the world works, or any of the color symbolism stuff I talked about in my last video, but just on a character level, on a dialogue level, I feel like I walked away with a completely new understanding of how to write complicated family relationships. I feel like I really get it now. In fact, maybe there's nothing more for me to learn at all. What's that? I should watch season 2 episode 6 of The Bear? Hold on 1 second. Yeah, okay, never mind. Definitely way more to learn. Subscribe. This video started as me, somehow, I don't know, it started as me trying to understand Gwen and Miles, and then I don't know what happened, I don't know how this came out instead. So I think I'm going to try to make that video next, so keep an eye out for that, or maybe I'll get distracted and accidentally make a video about the bear, who knows. Support the channel on Patreon, join the Schnee Patreon server, connect your Discord account to Patreon when you sub, and it will add you automatically to the server. Shouts to all the patrons, thank you as always. Thank you especially to high tier patrons Chap Brown and Caitlin Donovan. Hope you all enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Stay Spidey.